Sit right down and I'll show you where my dreams began.
I'm Michael Dugan, your culinary host, guiding you through the chef's journey. Join me at the chef's table, where you'll experience stories, secret sauces, signature dishes, and kitchen disasters. Jenn Haston is a professional speaker who helps businesses and individuals get more life out of their life and work balance equation through practical and personalized solutions. She's a passionate parent who advocates for body positivity and self-care for all folks. She's also an author as well as a speaker and a trainer. Please welcome Jenn Haston.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, I am so excited to have you on the show today. Wonderful. We've been talking about this for a long time, and I am just really glad that we're able to make this happen.
Me too.
For all of our listeners around the world. How are you doing?
I am doing really well.
Good. Well, I wanted to get started with digging back and thinking about growing up. The first question I ask our guests, our chefs, our cooks, our friends, everyone that's connected to Voice4Chefs is, do you have any connection to food at an early age?
Oh my gosh. I'm probably the anomaly in that I am one of the folks who will come on the show who doesn't regularly cook.
My wife is another. If you listen to her episode, it's called Stay Hungry. It's 16 minutes, and it was the very first episode of Voice4Chefs, and I spent 6 hours editing it because I knew nothing about editing. 16 minutes tells the story, so you are not alone, my friend.
I think my earliest connection to food was my aunt's chocolate chip cookies, and I will explain that.
Yeah.
I actually moved to another state to be closer to my aunt. I live in Illinois now. I used to live in Texas. And my aunt makes the most amazing chocolate chip cookies you have ever had in your entire life. And they are tasty and wonderful. And she showed me how to make them once. My aunt is one of these people who bounds out of bed with energy and greets the day like a Disney character and says, "Wake up, it's time to get up out of bed." And she made the cookies one time, and I remember her making the cookies, and I said, okay, I'm going to try to learn how to do this. And I never quite got the recipe right. You know what I mean? Like it was always her recipe, and it still is.
Yeah.
But it was such a connection for us.
So what did she put in them? Were there walnuts? Were there nuts, or just chocolate chips?
Chocolate chips. And actually one year I was talking to her about the fact that I was trying all different things, and I love white chocolate, which I know to some chefs is heresy.
No.
I love white chocolate.
Me too.
And so I asked her to put white chocolate in it. And she basically changed this recipe that she's been doing for years and years and years and given cookies to so many different people over the years. And I asked her for this change, and she did it. That's the kind of person that she is.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to think. My earliest food was, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to remember. Yeah, probably chocolate chip cookies, but there's so many things as a kid, like candy and cookies and sweets. But I think for me, growing up, and many of our listeners already know the answer to this, but because my dad was in the Coast Guard, we moved from coast to coast. We ate seafood, and anything related to seafood, like steamer clams, scallops, you name it. But my dad would bring home lobster from the boats. From the Coast Guard boats. I think it was illegal. He passed away, so I can say it. I think he had a scam going, because I think he was partnered with some of the fishermen and he would get free lobster. I'm 90% sure.
Wow.
And, because he would always talk around it, right? But he would bring them home and we would just devour them. And that's my memory, is lobster. But everybody has a different memory. So what was it like growing up as a child? What did you love to do? What did you dream about?
Oh my gosh. I think for as long as I can remember, I wanted to be an actress, and I am an actress. And it was very important to me. I remember doing this fake interview with my cousins I was going to be Brenda Starr. And for anybody who doesn't know who she is, she was this famous kind of comic star from like the 30s or the 40s. And she had this fabulous red hair and these green eyes. And she was a starlet, right? And so I did this fake interview with my cousins and was talking about being famous at like age 7. And it is still a fully unrealized dream because, I haven't been in a movie yet. And the word yet is very crucial there.
Wow. Yeah, I know you work in theater. I know you do karaoke. I know that you're very involved as a public speaker. And it's so interesting that it comes about, at an early age, right? As you were a kid and you started growing up, did you have kind of the same ideas as a teenager? Did that change?
I'm trying to think. It has always been a through line in my life for as long as I can remember.
That's amazing. I know that we've talked about this personally because I know you personally for a lot of reasons, and they're all very positive reasons. And we'll get into that. But I know you had a difficult childhood and you had neglect and not a lot of love, and that's tough to talk about. But how would you say that you've overcome that? And what strategies do you think that you've used to do that?
Wow. Well, you are right. It's not super easy to talk about. I appreciate your gentleness in asking that question.
It's a hard one.
It's a hard one to answer because it's a lifelong process to get through it.
Right.
I've had some wonderful people become part of my family. I like to call them family of choice members. Chosen family, I've heard it referred to as well. When I was 14, I met the person who would become my mother of choice. And she is a wonderful, wonderful person. And one of the things that was a hallmark of that relationship and still is her ability to be there. And somebody being there is, it looks different. It's a phone call. It's a card. It's a text message. It's something to let you know that they're there, that they're thinking about you. And I met her at the tender age of 14. And I really believe with all of my being that I'm alive because she took an interest.
Yeah, that's amazing because I think about my wife, right? And she had a really tough childhood and she had always talked about this amazing hero or heroine named Sister Laura. And we live in Washington State and she taught at Gonzaga University. But before that, she taught at a private, I think it was a Catholic elementary school. But anyway, she connected with Sister Laura. Sister Laura taught her how to write, and my wife has probably the most beautiful handwriting you've ever seen in your life. She also taught her coping life skills because she didn't get that from her parents at all. Her parents were divorced at a really young age. And me too, personally, I've had some challenges growing up. My dad was a blatant alcoholic and, we hid it for a long time. I love him, but oh my God, the crap and the shit that we had to deal with, growing up. And then I was thinking about this today and in talking with you about this, because this is such an important conversation to have for chefs, for culinary artists, for people, for anyone, that has mental health struggles and these kind of tough situations. Like, how do we cope? Well, my dad was a Coast Guard captain, which is like wonderful, right? We had a fun childhood going around on the water all the time, but he was a very tough person because you combine alcohol and military, and that is a terrible, terrible combination.
That is a terrible combination.
I still love him, but that was really hard growing up. So I can really, really relate, but getting back to coping and strategy.
I was going to say the first thing I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the part that therapy has played in my life. And that's not something I've always been public about.
Okay. And
it's only recently that I've discovered how important mental health is to your journey, to be a better partner, to be a better parent. I have to be in a state of mind that allows me to parent. And sometimes it's better for me to go make an appointment with my therapist than to go parent my child. And sometimes
that's amazing to realize that, recognize that.
Yeah.
My parents didn't.
Yeah.
My dad really
Neither did mine.
He didn't. He would just vent, he would just put it all out there every night. And yeah.
Well, when I think about the things that I'm trying to do, and there's a lot. The biggest part is making sure that when I mess up, I clean it up with my kid. I apologize to my kid. Think for a second, Michael, if you had been apologized to even once in your childhood for something that your parents did to you.
My mom did all the time. She was amazing.
Yeah.
But my dad, no, never.
Well, think about it for a second. If he had ever apologized to you, even one time, what would that have felt like?
Oh my God, it would be amazing. It, boost for your self-confidence and you carry those things forward. And then you end up in therapy and you end up talking about things.
Yeah.
You end up trying to cope.
Therapy meditation is another one. I definitely meditate. I dance it out, as has been popularized by Shonda Rhimes. Definitely something that I do when I get upset is I dance.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. And karaoke too.
Karaoke. I love to sing.
Yeah.
I love to dance.
Yeah.
I love to act. All of these things.
And a side note, I don't want to forget to say thanks for the shout out the other day. You texted me and said, "Hey, I'm going to karaoke. What songs do you want to hear?" And then you sung Howard Jones. And oh my God, I love Howard Jones, my wife too. So that was pretty cool. As we move on, what advice would you give to people that are coping with mental health? Now, I want to paint this picture. And you talked about it a little bit, but imagine this, okay? Since we're talking about chefs and we're talking about people that work in hospitality and these grueling conditions, and I'm just going to share a little bit about this. Right now, it's probably across the country, it's probably, 80 degrees pretty much in a lot of parts of the country, maybe even 85. But during the day, a lot of places, it's over 90 degrees. Imagine how hot a kitchen is when it's 95 degrees outside. It can be over 100 degrees in a kitchen. A lot of the chefs and cooks would wear shorts because they just couldn't handle it. And I worked in that environment for 10 years. You're sitting there and it's 5:50 p.m. on a Saturday night. Everybody else is out partying with their friends, enjoying the weekend, and you're working. About 5:50 p.m., there's a dinner rush coming in. The whole restaurant's filled. It's a very popular restaurant. And you're in the back and you're cooking all this food in a hot kitchen with a hot flame. All these orders are coming in and people are screaming. The wait staff is screaming at you. You make a mistake, you got to recook the food. You're in what's called the weeds. You go through that for hours at a time on a weekend. So you end up wrapping up the day or wrapping up the night. You clean up. You go home, it's 3:00 in the morning. The first thing you do is crack open a beer, sit in front of the TV for hours unwinding. For me, I worked next to a fryer for a while. And when I did that, I come home and my ears had just grease in them. So I'd have to take 2 showers and just unwind, right? Crack open a beer. I didn't really drink much, but it would relax me. And then I'd pass out, or I'd go to bed at like 4 a.m. and then start the same cycle over again. Those were mental health challenges that I had personally. And I know so many other people that I worked with had those challenges. How do you cope with that?
You paint a really compelling visual. And I have to tell you, that is something that to stay up till 3:00 in the morning, you don't have to work in the restaurant industry to do that. A lot of people do that, especially parents.
Yeah.
Because they feel like the only time they get is at night once the kid is in bed and the kitchen is clean, the dishes are done, the laundry is going or the laundry is sitting, waiting to be folded. It is definitely something that many people can relate to, not just the people in the restaurant industry. So what I would say is the biggest part of that is being intentional and finding some pocket of relaxation or something specific that you can do that is healthy, which could be a yoga class. It could be meditation. It could be going out with your friends and making a plan to go out with your friends, knowing that you have this rough week ahead of you where you're going to be at the restaurant and it's over 100 degrees and you're going to be hot and you're going to be in the weeds and there's going to be people yelling at you. Right now, there are so many service professionals. You want to talk about hospitality industry? We are the opposite of hospitable to the hospitality industry people right now because of everything going on.
There's many people that are special that I met on Clubhouse. And I talk about Clubhouse a lot because it's such an amazing place where people can share their stories, connect, and learn about what they're passionate about. For me, it was about food. So I joined this club called they're now called houses, but it's called Food is Religion.
Mhm.
And we have over 7,900 members around the world now. But I met this one chef, and her name is Chef Maria Campbell, and she's out of Philadelphia. And we became really good friends. She helped co-host a few shows that I was doing with her. And we've done a food talk show. We've done cooking classes together online on Clubhouse. But what I want to get to is that Chef Maria Campbell, she started a foundation, a nonprofit called Cooks Who Care. And it is so amazing because it's all about raising funds to help people who struggle with mental health and have challenges around mental health. And she provides funding for them, for care, for counseling, for all these things when they're in the hospitality industry. So she created this nonprofit to do this. And it's just, I have her episode is recorded, but it's Chef Maria Campbell, Cooks Who Care. But I just want to give her a shout out because she is such a dear friend, and this is really for her.
That's incredible.
I'm tongue tied at the moment, but the next thing I wanted to ask you and have you share with our listeners. So we talked a little bit about mental health, but we're also going to talk about something else that I think is really, really important for people that work in kitchens, people that are in the back of the house, maybe even the front of the house, and they have a voice, but they've never expressed their voice. They've never shared their stories. What advice can you give to a chef, to someone that wants to bring themselves out there, to get involved in connecting the public and public speaking, and maybe, becoming a TEDx speaker and talking about the restaurant business?
Yeah.
Living their dream. Maybe they want to start a pop-up and they need to market it and they need to get themselves out there, but they're afraid to do that. Let's talk about public speaking. Let's talk about overcoming those challenges.
Sure. I would say, first of all, public speaking, it means a lot of different things to a lot of people, right? Like there's a lot of people who public speak and they're basically teaching other people how to do something online. That's public speaking. Standing in front of a group of people is definitely a piece of that, but it's not everything. Because we've done so much virtually, it's about Clubhouse and places like that where you can get the experience. Just hop into a room and start. I can't think of who said it now, but I'll give it to you for the show notes later. You don't have to be great to start. You do have to start to be great.
Brilliant saying.
And sometimes you have to be willing to just really screw it up first.
Yeah.
You have to be willing for it not to be perfect in order to get to doing it. John Acuff is somebody I really admire, and he says that 90% done and shared with the world is going to change way more lives than 100% perfect and locked in your head.
Interesting.
So share it with the world. You have a voice. Nobody has a voice like you. They don't have your intonations. They don't have the words that you're going to use. They certainly don't have your stories. And someone needs to hear your story. Yeah, someone needs to hear your story. Anybody listening to this, somebody needs to hear your story, your story.
I love that. And, for me, I grew up in a family where I hesitated telling stories. I never felt comfortable doing it. And then I discovered this nonprofit called Toastmasters, and I learned how to become a better storyteller, and really things change. People started listening to my stories. They started really connecting with them. And that's when I really felt more confidence. So I shared with you a little bit about my feelings around Toastmasters, not to get too deep, but what's been your experience with Toastmasters?
I encountered Toastmasters back in 1999, and I was part of the group in college when I was just getting my associate's degree, and I was part of the PR team helping people with vice president of education. So all the different roles I played to just learn more about the parliamentary procedure and how it all works, and specifically just giving speeches and getting really, really good. I like to call it feed forward, because there is no going back. When you give a speech, you get feed forward, which is that you did this well, and this is something you can improve upon. There's no going back unless you have a time machine. So I feel that feed forward is a much more accurate depiction of what it is when people tell you, you did this well, this needs improvement. I really liked this. This was a good word choice. These are the kind of things that you can get only in Toastmasters because it's the way that people speak. And it's designed to help people get better at expressing themselves. If you're in a position where you're going to be able to influence a $10,000 project at work, you don't want the first time you speak up to be in that meeting. You want to be ready when your boss says, hey, I have this great project for you, and it's going to be this percentage of your budget, and I want to know what you think and what ideas do you have. You want to be ready to articulately express yourself. And that is something that Toastmasters really helped me with.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You don't know what to make for dinner again? You want to explore new cuisines, but you don't have time? What if you have new inspirations and we provide you with the ingredients and recipes? We know you want to travel, learn new foods, explore the world, but life's responsibilities keep getting in your way. What if you can bring those experiences to your home neatly packed into a box? Ladybug Collective is a subscription service that finds real people from around the world to create beautifully curated assortments of recipes, ingredients, and cultural content. Not only do we include cultural ingredients, but also a set of detailed recipe cards with instructions on how to use them. Each box also has a QR code that, when scanned, takes you to tons more global exploration to immerse yourself in. Everything from film to lifestyle, art to history, it all can be found here. Live your life to the fullest. Subscribe now and don't miss out on the next cultural adventure. Ladybug Collective. Always exploring.
I have to agree with you on that. It really, the confidence that you gain, and the thing that's interesting about Toastmasters is a lot of clubs, they have clubs around the world. I think there's over 330 countries now in Toastmasters. Definitely over 330, but basically you can go once a week and practice public speaking. Once a week. Imagine how many weeks in a year, how much practice you could actually get to gain more self-confidence, to overcome whatever fears you have. And many of us have done it, and it's just amazing. For me, Toastmasters is what led me to becoming a podcaster and interviewing chefs around the world. Everyone has a different experience, but we all go into it because either we have a fear of public speaking, we have a curiosity around public speaking, or we're professional, we're a teacher, a trainer, and we're trying to hone those skills. But Toastmasters is one thing, but then there's another level. And for both you and I, stage time was that next level. Can you tell us a little bit about what stage time is and maybe what that did for you?
Okay, so first of all, to hear the words stage time, that's being on stage, and time like a ticking clock. One of the things that Darren LaCroix says, who is the founder behind this organization, Stage Time University, is you have to be on stage to get better, right? So stage time, stage time, stage time. That's from when he was starting out. And he was starting out as a stand-up comedian. And so the comedians he was working with was telling him, you just got to get on stage. You just got to get on stage to get better. You just got to get on stage to get better. So he extrapolated that advice and used it when he was working towards becoming world champion. What is it? Toastmasters world champion?
World champion of public speaking.
There it is. Thank you. And so one of the things that he talks about is that stage time is any chance that you get to speak, you take. And his group is an intensive area where you can get better as a speaker. And one of the things that catapulted me from being the speaker that I was to the speaker that I am today was being part of that group where we did what's called a 77-day challenge. And so what that is that you go on camera and for 77 days in a row, you do a video talking about what matters to you. And one of the things that came out of that was my YouTube channel. I do a weekly message every single week about being a better partner, a better parent, and a better human. And that came out of doing the Stage Time University program because I was talking every day about something I was passionate about. And it caused me, one, to get over doing Facebook Lives. I was terrified to get on live because I like to edit. Everybody likes that, right?
Yeah, me too.
So I got over that because once you're live, that's it. You're there. And if you make a flub or you make a mistake, everybody makes mistakes. And it made me so much more comfortable with the camera. And one of the things that happened out of that is that I became really clear on what my message is. And as the boss of balance It's what I care about most, is helping folks find balance. And that took 77 days, just doing a message every single day. What am I going to talk about? Sometimes I would use a quote. Sometimes I would talk about what was going on in my own life. And it was really incredible, really getting down to the nitty gritty of what I wanted to talk about. And that was through that experience in stage time.
It just took me to another level. I mean, I was giving 5 to 7 minute speeches in Toastmasters, and then I was watching people get coached to give world champion speeches, to tell like epic stories, to really move an audience. You know, a lot of these people that came to stage time, it's a whole nother level.
And Michael, I would be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that that's how we met.
Yeah, I know. But for me, you know, it's a whole nother level, because you're meeting with people around the world, and some of them are professional speakers, some of them are trainers, some of them are teachers, some are just professionals, and a lot of them want to become public speakers. So imagine if you're a chef. I know several who have become TEDx speakers and share their story about the restaurant business on TEDx. So there's that kind of coaching, that level of coaching. But Toastmasters is the beginning. And then stage time would be the next level, essentially. And then we met because of a book called 17 Minutes to Your Dream that Darren LaCroix, who was the founder of Stage Time, you know, this was his dream to share with everyone. It was so powerful. We both went to this kickoff party launch in Las Vegas. It was virtual and in person, but we both went virtual, and then we connected. And tell me a little bit more about your experience with that.
Oh, wow. So I have been following Darren for a really long time, way before I got involved with Stage Time University. And so I've been a big fan of his.
Me too.
He talks about Rudy Rudiger, and that is a real life hero story, right? And so it's something that has always resonated deeply with me. And I love the fact that he talked about that. It just really got to me when he talked through that. And when he was asking for testimonials and I gave him a testimonial, he actually put it in the book.
Wow.
And I didn't know that until I opened my copy of the book and read it on page 96. Yes, that's right. It's on page 96 of 17 Minutes to Your Dream. It unlocked something in me. And after talking about writing a book for 8 years, I finally started doing it through this method that Darren taught in the 17 Minutes to Your Dream. It's a very simple concept. You worked for 17 minutes a day. You set a timer. Hopefully you'd work a little bit more, but at the very least you'd work 17, because if you set out to do something for an hour, you're going to quit before you start.
Wow.
And it's one of those things that everybody's like, oh, well, I'm sure I have a book in me. Okay, so how do you start? Well, I have no idea. Okay, well, start writing on a piece of paper. You were asking earlier, what can chefs do if they have a voice and they want to get started? Start writing things down.
Oh, yeah.
Listening to snatches of kitchen dialogue, and you're going back and forth, and you're in the weeds, and you have a really unruly customer. Change the name, but write it down. Like, these are things that I would say you want to do because you have a voice inside you, right? Like, that's why you're listening to this, because Voice4Chefs, right? It's literally your message. And again, no one has a voice like you. No one tells a story like you. And so when I read in Darren's book my testimonial about what he had done to help crystallize my message, I realized if he can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, that's very true. He really does empower people to reach out for their dreams. And as a coach, he's brilliant in his approach. And he has other people that are part of his team. And let me just share a little bit about them. Mark Brown is the 1995 world champion of public speaking in Toastmasters. He's also a stage time coach, and he's brilliant, originally from Jamaica. Jennifer Leone, who is a public speaking coach, she's an international public speaking coach, and she's out of Australia. Oh my gosh, she can find a story inside you like you could not imagine. The way that she approaches things, the way that she can bring out a really true, emotional, deep-rooted story is incredible. And being part of Stage Time, both you and I learned that. from Mark and from Jennifer and Darren LaCroix, and Michael Davis. He's a certified world-class speaking coach, TEDx coach, and author.
A wonderful coach.
All of these people, Darren LaCroix brought together and created Stage Time University. Oh my gosh. And as we're moving on, I love Stage Time. And I love 17 Minutes to Your Dream. I read it, and my dream was to interview the top chefs of the world. And I'm getting closer. I've had a couple celebrity chefs on the show, working on another one that's a TEDx speaker, another amazing chef who is a TEDx Mile speaker. And, just the book itself really drove me to go further and to really, track everything too. Just like you said, it's like, okay, 50 minutes here, 45 minutes here.
And aha moments and breakthroughs is a good thing to write down too, because in the takeaways, and, let's just take a minute, Michael, right now to realize the fact that you are in the middle of pursuing this dream.
I am.
Let's give this some weight. This is important.
Yeah, it's really happening. I look back and it's so interesting because when this started, I had a group of people that we kind of shaped the podcast, including an amazing musician, Steve Olson, who wrote and created this intro and outro for the podcast. But I started out calling chefs in Seattle, right? And owners of restaurants and saying, hey, can I interview your chef? And I'd wait 3 days, 4 days for them to call me back. And I'd waste all this time and effort just focusing on making that connection. Fast forward 2.5 years, chefs call me from around the world. They connect in Instagram. They say, hey, I'd love to come on your show. I get referrals all the time for Voice4Chefs, and for me, I never knew that it would go to this level. And now I look and, last year, I think it was probably 15 countries. Now we're at 38 around the world, and 38 countries where people are listening. So thank you, everyone, by the way, for listening to the show. And so grateful. It's a lot of work to do a podcast, but it's so rewarding. But the truth is, it's not about me. It's about the guest. It's about the listener. And I firmly believe that in my heart and in my soul. It's about the story. It's about your story, Jen. It's about their story, because I feel like a conductor. I feel like, for me, I'm conducting a symphony, and the symphony is to create this amazing journey of the guest. And that's what Voice4Chefs is all about. And it's also about people who give back to the community. So I guess I took more than a moment.
I'm glad you did. And I'm glad you asked me to be part of the journey. Writing the blurbs for the podcast makes me so happy.
Yeah. And that was the next thing, is like, why did you choose to join the Voice4Chefs team as our writer? I mean, I'm thrilled.
You asked.
That's true. I did. I'm just so grateful and honored.
I was so knocked out by the fact that you were pursuing something that was so important to you. And I have long been a fan of people going for it, right? Like, one of my very best friends, I called her a doctor before she got her PhD. Somebody's studying to be a nurse, I call them nurse. Call them doctor, call them a counselor if they're working towards a law degree. Like, that has always been, I've got my pom-poms up for everybody. Mm-hmm. So when you mentioned that, you were doing this and you liked my writing, flattery will get you pretty far, I was so inspired by that, and I said, I want to be part of this. I really want to be part of that.
Well, I'm so glad you are. We all are. And it's really an amazing journey. Some of it is on the podcast. And then also, as most listeners should know by now, it's also on Clubhouse. Tell us a little bit. We talked about Clubhouse. Tell us a little bit about your journey on Clubhouse.
I joined Clubhouse when someone in Toastmasters had told me during the pandemic, when everybody was, not doing anything in person anymore, they said, if you're not on Clubhouse, you're missing out. And I've met so many wonderful people, other speakers, TEDx people, learning more about that journey, figuring out if that's for me or not has been a big part of that too, like on Clubhouse, and learning more about what people do to become TEDx speakers, and like what you really have to hone in and figure out what your message is before you can, put yourself out there for TEDx. And actually out of that, I decided that certainly it's not out of the realm of possibility, but my focus has been on just getting on stage, whether that is virtually or on a stage and talking to people and just having an audience to talk about balance and how important it is that we all get rest, that we all take rest before we need it, not when we need it.
Rest. Oh my gosh.
Rest is not something you earn or something you deserve. It's a right. Rest is a right.
That's a very interesting quote.
It's mine.
I love it. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. What are your aspirations? Where do you want to go?
Well, I am writing, I wrote my book, and it is a body positivity book for children. I'm in my second edit round right now, waiting for the next round to see where we're going to go with publishing. I'm really excited about it. And something that I continue to do is talk to other parents about how important it is to be on your mental health journey, wherever that is. Because of my own experience in my own neglected childhood, I am doing my very best to gentle parent my child and work through whatever it is that we need to work through to make sure she has the best childhood possible. And what that looks like is different for every parent. Something that I'm fond of saying to my clients is, you are an expert on your child. And no matter how many experts you look at, how many letters they have behind their name, they are not an expert on your child. You are an expert on your child. The biggest thing is making sure that you're taking time to really be in the moment with your kids and to be there. And when you can't, outsource your parenting, get a babysitter, find a friend to exchange babysitting with so you get a break. And that's something that I'm deeply passionate about. And working with people right now. I'm working with a parenting group. I have an upcoming session that I'm going to be doing to just give them the space to talk about their pain points and what's difficult and how we can all come together.
If people want your help in finding balance, how do they find you?
I am easily found on Instagram at Haston Helping Hands, and that's Haston, helping, like what I'm there to do. And hands, like when you hold out your hand to another person. And I do a weekly message about being a better parent, partner, and human, and talking about balance. I am available. You can reach out to me there. And I do a weekly message on Wednesdays. So I've got one coming up pretty soon.
Jenn, I'm going to have links to other ways to connect in our show notes and on our website. But final question, what one thing would you like everyone in the audience to take away from today's interview?
I think that there are a lot of recipes that you can look up, you can get from family members, you can get from chosen family members. And the most important recipe is the one that you build for yourself and the life that you're building for yourself. Make sure that you're finding ways to be present.
That is wonderful. Jenn, I just want to thank you for being a guest on the show, but also for all the amazing support you've given to me and Voice4Chefs as our writer, as a friend, as a listener. I am just so grateful.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for joining us today. Follow us on Facebook. Find our website in the show notes. Subscribe on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen. Leave a comment with 5 stars. And stay tuned for the next episode of Voice4Chefs.